Hello, welcome back to the channel. A fashion retail company contacted us because they were losing tens of thousands of dollars every time they were running a marketing campaign. It was not because they had bad demand planners, it's just because the sales forecast never reached the supply team that is in charge of creating factories order on time. So we helped them to implement an integrated planning platform to close this gap. To help you understand how this works, I have built this simulation platforms that is an exact replica of what we have implemented for this customer. This includes all the modules from demand planning, merchandising, supply planning, and distribution. And the idea of this video is that we are going to reconstitute the scenario that happened in this fashion retailer using two perspectives. So the initial situation where they were only using spreadsheets, and this is coming from an actual scenario, and then what happens now when they have an integrated platform. If you are hesitating about implementing this kind of platform in your company, or you know companies that are facing the similar issues, that could be a good way for you to get familiar on the power of integrated platforms and how you can use it to help companies avoid lost sales. So first, maybe let me introduce you the end-to-end planning team of SupFashion, this fashion retail company that we are helping. So at first, you have Sarah that is in charge of the demand planning. So she works with the marketing teams, with the retail teams. She uses historical sales to predict what would be the future demand by SKU and by store. Her forecasts are used by Mark, which is in charge of the product merchandising. So objective is to maximize the profitability of the company. So for that, he needs to allocate in his buy plan volumes in the different stores based on his understanding of the demand, but also on the profitability of the different items. So when Mark has finished his buy plan, he can communicate to Leeway, which is in charge of the supply planning. So Leeway creates the orders that are sent to the factories to produce the goods. And when these orders are confirmed, she can communicate to Omar for everything related to the distribution planning. So how these finished goods will be transferred to distribution centers, warehouses, for then a final delivery to the stores. So what happens without a planning platform? So the scenario starts with the marketing team that contacts the demand planner, Sarah. So they manage to secure a spot in a sportswear fair in the south of US. And they think that the sales of a specific SKU, which is the base layer top black, will be impacted by this marketing campaign. And they ask Sarah to update the forecast for this SKU on two different stores, so one in Atlanta and one in Charlotte. Unfortunately, Sarah is using spreadsheets, so she opens the spreadsheet of the forecast of April, and then she changed this value. But then she has other things to do during the day, so this information sits on her desk, and we have to wait multiple days before this spreadsheet is sent to Mark. So Mark is a product merchandiser, so he has to buy these different quantities to the different stores to make sure that they receive them from the factories. And Mark is updating his buy plan based on an initial forecast that was shared by Sarah. Unfortunately, Sarah continued to work on other versions that are seated on her computer. Mark takes a couple of days to update the buy plan, and Leeway is informed only 6 days after that she needs to increase the buying quantity for this specific SKU for the additional sales of the stores. So she analyzed that, she takes 1 or 2 days, and then she sends the order to the factories. So the factories tell them that it's probably too late to receive the products on time. And in the meantime, Omar is not informed. He has to wait up to the S&op meeting, that is 11 days after the initial signal was received, to be informed that he will receive additional units for these two stores. So this is what happens when you have siloed teams that are working on different spreadsheets. Information is moving very slowly. But now, all this process can be done in less than 24 hours, thanks to this platform. So this is not the actual platform that has been implemented. They used like enterprise software, but This is roughly the same functionalities. It just only took me one day to replicate that in this small web application that you can also access and test yourself in the link that you can find in the description. So here you have everything that is needed for this end-to-end planning. So first you have what I call the command center, where you have an overview of the different flows. So here we are still talking about SupFashion. So SupFashion has 5 different suppliers that are delivering to a central distribution center, and this central distribution center is delivering to regional DCs that are fulfilling stores. Here, as you will see, we will not enter that much into the distribution part. What is important is to make sure that the factories are informed in time, so the products are received in the DC and the stores for the fair. So for that, it's quite simple. What we need to ask Sarah is to go to the demand planning tab. So she has to select the SKU that I told you about, which is the base layer top black. So it's part of the category apparel. What you could see here is that this is the forecast of the specific SKU for all the different stores. Here what we can do is select only the 2 stores that will be impacted by this fair. So this is Atlanta and Charlotte. And what you could see here is the past forecast with the actual sales, and we can see measuring the error that we had in the past. So in green you have the actual sales. So what we could see is that we were under forecasting in the past. And here you have the forecast for April, May and June. And today it's April 10th. So here Sarah doesn't have to open any spreadsheet. She just has to go to Atlanta forecast of May, because the fair will happen in May. She will put the number of additional units. Here she will be able to foresee what would be the impact of these additional sales in the forecast on the merchandising for Mark, but also on the supply planning, so for Leeway, and on the distribution planning for Omar, and the overall financial forecast that I haven't talked about yet, but which is also part of the sales and operating planning. So here she can put a reason code. So here I can say TV campaign May, June as suggested. And the forecast update is staged. So let's say that we have also additional 20 units for Charlotte store with the same reason, May, June. We can stage the change. Then what you can see here, there is a notification. So she has pending changes. What does that mean? That means she has updated her forecast, and now she can decide to cascade the impact to her other colleagues. And before doing that, she has a visibility on the impact of the additional supply needs, so what Leeway will have to order, and as I could say, plan revenue and everything. So let's say that she can confirm. Now it's saved. And as she is the owner of the demand forecast, she has to click here on Run End-to-End Cascade. The idea of that is now that her forecasts are recorded in the system. By clicking on this button, she will send a notification to Leeway, to Mark, to Omar about the fact that the demand forecast changed for these two different SKUs, for this single SKU in the 2 different stores. And here she doesn't have to send emails, she doesn't have to send spreadsheets, everything is in the platform. So let's say that now we are Mark, right, in charge of the merchandising. What we could see here is that we have a notification, whoa, there are 2 different changes from the demand, and it says these are the changes impacting Charlotte and Atlanta. That's basically what Sarah did. We can dismiss this notification, and what we could see here is that 2 additional buy orders have been created. So now Mark is already informed of the change that he has to do. He can, of course, not approve them and create all the change, or he can approve. So here he will approve for the scenario. So he just has to click approve. And now there is no matter of cascading, because we already have informed leeway that there will be potential additional supply orders. And what we can do, we can put ourselves in the shoes of leeway and go on supply planning. What we could see here is that we have the notification for upstream from the demand. Maybe let me just update, because normally we have also, okay. We should notify supply. I forgot that. So now we have approved the 2 buy orders. We can inform leeway that she has to create these 2 supply planning orders in order to make sure that the factories are informed about these 2 additional orders of 50 units that we need to consider for the fair. And what we could see here is that leeway on our screen received the 2 notifications from the merchandise team. She is also informed that this change is coming from the fact that Sarah updated the forecast. Here, what we can do for better visibility is to only focus on Atlanta and Charlotte. And normally, here, if we are refreshing, we have 2 additional supply orders. So to make it clean, let me just update Atlanta and Charlotte. As you could see here, we have this first factory order of 30 units that is linked to Atlanta or demand, and these 20 units that are linked to Charlotte. We can confirm, and now we can notify distribution. So here, as you could see, this is what I explained in the article. If we are realistic, this can be done in 1 day. And what you will understand from the case study is that the main issue that we faced, why the company was losing money, is because the factories didn't receive the orders on time. Now we can approve the order in less than 24 hours because we received the notification quite quickly. We didn't need to have a meeting. We didn't need to have an email or an alignment with all the different teams. It can be done on the flow while doing other things. We can notify distribution. So now Omar doesn't have to wait for the S&op planning to be able to understand this additional charge in distribution planning. So here we need probably to refresh. So this is on dev mode. This is a simulation that is on dev mode. So probably we have some bugs. But here what we will see is that now we have to handle additional shipments from the central distribution center or the distribution of US, depending on the way that you have implemented your distribution flows. And Omar can inform the warehouse teams that they will have to handle these additional shipments before the fair. So let me just update. No, yeah, it's already planned. So yeah, here it's automatic. I forgot about that. So this is the first version of this demo tool. This is not what we are going to deploy for the customers. There are probably like commercial softwares that are better. But what we are trying to do is to build a proof of concept of how integrated planning can be impactful for any companies, any size, and probably find also an alternative of these very complex and expensive softwares for maybe smaller organizations. But this is still in work in progress, and we are still working on the reliability and the productivity. But here's more like learning about integrated business planning with a demo, and this is working at this stage. What are the next steps? So for me, what we have proved is the power of having information flowing from the different planning teams. But we can then add what we are more specialized in Logic Green and what you have discovered in this YouTube channel, which is basically optimization algorithms. So for demand planning, instead of relying on the baseline statistical forecast, we can implement machine learning. And now, since the different teams can work together in the same platform, probably the features that are going to be used by the machine learning algorithm could be fed by marketing, by merchandising, by any team. So the algorithm use all the knowledge of the company to be able to understand and foresee the future demand. Then related to merchandising, so here, if you're not familiar with merchandising, the idea is to allocate the volumes to stores to maximize the profitability. And this is a bit linked to what I introduced in the past in this channel, this approach of using data to maximize the efficiency of a value chain. Looking at sales channel, minimizing inventory. So we can include this kind of algorithms in the allocation of the merchandising team. So here it was just additional forecast by order. We can now implement a more complex logic, and this will be the topic of future videos. Related to supply planning, we already discussed about a supply planning algorithm that I have introduced on my blog, where we basically optimize the delivery from the factories to the stores to minimize logistic costs, but also to play maybe with the capacity of the factories. And for that, for instance, I can introduce an additional scenario where we have multiple suppliers for the same SKU. And finally, for distribution, because we didn't help that much Omar, instead of informing Omar that he will have additional shipments, we can help him managing the inventories of warehouses and stores by implementing inventory management rules that will help him to find a balance between low inventory and efficient distribution. So this is the beginning. We are going to use this model as a simulation tool or digital twin, keeping the same example of SupPlan. So stay tuned. If you have any question about how I built this platform, what kind of added value this case study provided to the customer, don't hesitate to use the comment section, and see you for the next video.